So welcome to episode 23 of 10-Minute Record Reviews. This time we're going to talk about Aretha Franklin's 1967 smash, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Loved You. And this is her first album on Atlantic, which is significant for reasons we'll talk about. I've got the 1968 US re-release on stereo. It's got the, you can tell it's the year after it came out because it's got the Grammy Award winner sticker on it. And this particular pressing sounds absolutely fantastic. So this is Aretha's 10th album, amazingly enough, and amazing to me that 9 albums go by before she finally, with somebody of her prodigious talent, finally hits the mark. And it coincides with a change of label. So Columbia, she'd been with Columbia since the very early 60s. They had ended up, I think overall they lost about 90 grand on her. Their own damn fault. They had produced her very poorly. They had given her these stodgy arrangements. They had infamously tried to channel her into jazz, not the lane to pick for her, and yet they were fairly persistent about that. And not only was that an issue because she's not a jazz singer, she's a soul singer. It's an issue because jazz was, of course, going through a big shrinkage of its commercial appeal in the 1960s. So it was a bad economic choice and a bad artistic choice. So she signs in late '66. She right away goes down to Muscle Shoals, to the Fame Studios, and records a couple of tracks down there with the Swampers of the famous sort of studio session group, which who were name checked in Sweet Home Alabama and elsewhere. And she records "I Never Loved a Man the Way I Loved You" there. She only spent one day, but it was a very significant day because that song is released the next month. It goes to number 1 on R&B, goes to number 9 on Billboard, and gets Jerry Wexler of Atlantic hustling her into the studio in Atlantic to cut the rest of what was going to be her first album here. This album goes to number 2 in the Billboard charts. It's considered retrospectively one of the top 4 or 5, 10, whatever albums of the 1960s. It picked up 2 Grammys, both for her performance of "Respect," the Otis Redding song in here, which of course becomes her signature song. In addition to "Respect" and "I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You," there's a third single on this album which did quite well, which was "Do Right Woman, Do Right Man," which hits number 37 in the R&B charts. So it's a bit of a hit monster. Last sort of general thing to say about this record is something I think is often unremarked upon, is that notwithstanding the great sort of change of gears and change of lane for Aretha on this record, and notwithstanding her incredible performances here and the wonderful production, whether it's the Muscle Shoals songs or the songs done at the Atlantic Studios, it's a contribution of her sisters, who are Carolyn and Irma, who are the backup singers here, but are given lots of presence in the mix. They're also involved in composing a number of the songs as well. And so there's a real, it's not quite Sister Sledge, but there's a real group feel to this album that often doesn't get highlighted when people talk about it. It really does come through when you listen to the whole thing, all the way through. So side 1 starts off with her absolute signature song, "Respect," which of course was not her song, it was Otis Redding's song, and which she, as she did so well, completely made her own. And she did so both through her own interpretation, but also because she and her sisters worked out so many of the signature pieces, like the spelling out of "RESPECT," which was her sister Carolyn's suggestion. The whole inclusion of the backup line, "Sock it to me, which becomes actually a social catchphrase subsequent to the song. As again, the sisters worked that out themselves. And when you listen to that song, and particularly listening to it on some of the early vinyl, the production makes it so possible to pick out all these individual contributions. It really is quite something. Followed by "Drown in My Own Tears," which is a cover and a wonderful delivery by Aretha. "Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You." Here, her vocal, I think, is absolutely incredible. The bass line is in some respects also the kind of co-hero of this particular song, and there's and there's some wonderful guitar by one of the members of the Swampers, Jimmy Johnson. Then there's Soul Serenade, which is an excellent arrangement. It gives so much space for Aretha to do that Aretha thing where there's a punch or a flourish of music and then a pause, and then she can just launch forward in almost like coiled like a spring, sort of delivering the lyrics that she and the other flourishes that she does. You know, again, call and answer all the way through. And she plays, particularly at the end of the song, she plays off the horn section extremely well here. Don't Let Me Lose This Dream, which was one of a couple of songs she composed with her then husband. They were to separate pretty shortly thereafter. A little jazzy intro, probably the least memorable song on the album, I would say. And then side one closes out with Baby, 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 which she wrote with her sister Carolyn. It's a lovely soul ballad, and the interplay between the sisters is I think, as good, well, it's pretty good in respect, but it's almost as good here as it is in that more famous song. And side two, Dr. Feelgood, which is the second of the two songs that she writes with Ted White, her then husband. It's a nice slow blues. It's the better of the two compositions that they have on the record. It's kind of ironic considering that as I understand it, he was quite violent to her during their relationship, and she was going to show him the door pretty soon. So because it's all about, you know, the lyrics are all about, you know, bragging about the quality of guy she's got. So I'm guessing he wrote them. Then we're on to there are two Sam Cooke songs on side two, and Aretha's telling us here, or she's showing us that she is not just a jukebox cover artist kind of person. She does lots of covers, but she never covers the song. She always makes it her own. She does this for the first time. She takes on two of Sam Cooke's hugest hits. These aren't deep cuts that she's sort of reviving. This one's Good Times. And no matter how many times I hear this song, I always think that whether it's Sam Cooke's version or Aretha's version, I always think there's a line missing for the chorus, but that's could just be me. Anyway, I feel she certainly makes it her own. I felt, you know, when I listened to it again in preparation for this, it still feels to me, feels a little bit phoned in, and I'm not quite sure why. I don't think she connects very well somehow with the lyric as well as she does on so many of the other songs. So again, this is not necessarily one of the highlights, even though it's a phenomenal singer covering a phenomenal song. It's somehow less than it might be. Then we have Do Right Woman, Do Right Man. This is a song which was given to her by the songwriting duo out of Memphis, Pan and Moman. It's one of the two songs which they did, again, in Muscle Shoals. Her vocal tone here on this song, it really stands out from the rest of the album. She seems much deeper in her range, and it seems like a wonderfully honest and emotional reading of the lyric. Anyway, it's I think, a very moving delivery, very moving song. Then we're on to Save Me, which is a song that King Curtis, who's a sax player on this album, had written the basic elements of a year or two before, basing it on the song by Van Morrison's first group, Them, Gloria, the guitar figure in that. So you'll notice if you listen to this album, the guitar figure is almost identical to the guitar figure in Gloria. And it's also this song Aretha name checks various superheroes in the outro, which is kind of amusing, including Batman. So it's a really good song. And then the closing track is the second of the two Sam Cooke songs that she covers, A Change Is Gonna Come. Interesting version. She tweaks the vocal melody quite a bit actually on this. Again, definitely her own version. That's what she did. Is it as strong as the Sam Cooke version? I don't know. I think it's a better attempt at a Sam Cooke song than Good Times was earlier on. I don't know if it makes any sense to compare the two, because his version is a pretty high bar, but she's definitely created something new here and something really quite good. So to say about this album, it's a 5-star record. There's no two ways about it. There are some points which are weaker than others, but overall, this is an incredibly rewarding listen all the way through. A star is finally born at the 10th time of asking, and this album is essential for everybody.